Power Producers Shop Talk, where we are refining and redefining the sales game by equipping you with the tools you need to differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
Listening to the podcast is only going to get you so far. Why not take your game to the next level? Check out Power Producer Basecamp on killingcommercial.com today.
Tactical skills that'll help you provide deliverable value to your clients and prospects.
Want to have the sweet swag that we send out from the Power Producers podcast for your clients and employees? Check out policyt.com today.
And action items that you can provide to take your prospects and clients to the next level.
Want to create an online presence but don't know how to start? Check out crushingcontent.com. It's done for you, so all you have to do is show up.
This is Power Producer Shop Talk, production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Power Producer Shop Talk, where we are continuing our series on becoming the protege. And today's guest is the one and only female Miss Pam Seidler. And I'm, pulling for her. Honestly, I'm pulling for everybody. We've talked about this. It's like having 9 kids. I can't pick one. But what I will tell you is I'm especially proud of Pam because she put herself out there being new in the industry, number one. And I have to believe maybe if she wasn't new, she might not have put herself out there as much, because it seems like some of our more established female constituency withheld the application this year. So my hope and goal is that Pam absolutely crushes it this year and makes the ladies feel comfortable to come back, because I feel like we took a couple years off and we lost momentum. Year one, we had female, I think it was Annabelle, and I'm gonna get in trouble if I don't know both of them, but I think it was just Annabelle actually, but I could be wrong. Then the next year, like half the contestants were female.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, we had some that you didn't see that ended up pulling out like right out of the bag, right out of the box too. So we did. I know we had Abby, we had Sarah, there were a bunch. Anyhow, ladies, put your application in when I announce this thing for season 4. I'm already committing to it. I'm sick of people asking me about it and me dancing around it. There will be a season 4. We'll dial it in season 3. Now that we have production in-house and all that, it'll be good. So anyhow, very much looking forward to watching her compete. That being said, Pam is brand spanking new to commercial insurance. She's done some personal line stuff and worked in the captive side of the industry. So as we kick off, why don't you give everybody a little bit of your background, and then I'm just going to pepper you with questions.
Yeah. Background with regards to insurance, or just in
Who is Pam Seidler? Let us in your head a little bit.
Who am I? Okay. Yeah, so I am Midwest gal. I live in Kansas City, Missouri, but I travel. When I graduated college, I was given advice from I forget who it was, someone older than me, had said, if you don't want to get stuck here, this might be the time to consider moving, somewhere else. So at the time, I really wanted to work in the pet industry. The first job I got out of college was at Hill's Pet Nutrition. And so I looked at San Diego, because that's where Petco's headquarters was. Phoenix, because that's where PetSmart is, and then DC for the Animal Planet. And then I went and had informational interviews, in those places, and finally decided on San Diego. So that's where I moved right after college. I was there for 5 years, worked in radio and TV for the most part. I never ended up getting hired at Petco. I tried many times. I even tried bringing a cookie cake with a dog bone on it, saying it'd be a treat to work for you. I tried. I worked at the Fox 6 News, and I was there for 5 years. And so we did like a little bit where the main anchor interviewed me, like I was a special guest, and I was applying to work at, I think it was the zoo, or that might have been for Petco too. Still never works. But so I was mainly in events planning, worked for the Fox affiliate, and then I was in radio. And surprisingly enough, I worked for a Spanish radio station. I can understand Spanish. I can sit in meetings with everyone speaking Spanish. I still have a very gringa accent. I can't roll my R's, but I can get by. And then when I left San Diego, I ended up moving up to Seattle. I ended up staying in Seattle for 3 years, but I moved there for a radio gig. And that was right when the economy crashed. And I was the first one, or the last one hired. So one of the first ones to be let go during that time. And then met up with a whole bunch of senior radio and TV executives, and they were launching a startup called eTags, which was putting digital media on products in a retail environment. So that was great, working with them until they forget what happened. I think the guy ended up running out of money. So then I got out of radio and TV because that was like my second layoff, and I went into healthcare. And I started in healthcare with the senior housing world. Many of you may have heard of the placement services. Like I worked for A Place for Mom, and then later seniorliving.net, but helped adult children and spouses of someone who is aging find the appropriate housing for them. And that's what led me back to Kansas City. So, and I was back in Kansas City for about 4 years. I met my now husband, and his job took him down to Texas. So we moved to Texas. I was in Houston, Texas for 4 years. We were caught up in the Hurricane Harvey. Like our house was flooded, and it was kind of bizarre. So he is a railroad guy, and he had been with the railroad for 18 years at that point. And he was laid off when we were stuck in the second floor of our house. So he lost his job, and I had been laid off from a oxygen company. And so we were jobless and stuck in our house with like 2 foster dogs and our dogs on the floor. But our goal was to try to get back to Kansas City. Whoever got a job first is where we would move, and he ended up getting a job outside of Chicago. So we moved there for 4 years, and then now we're back in Kansas City again. So I've lived all over, and had a variety of different positions in healthcare. When I was in Kansas City, I was at Walgreens Infusion. And then I got into telemedicine when I was in Texas, and then oxygen sales. And what got me turned on to insurance, I tell this story all the time, but I met a man when I was in my 20s, and I was on a plane flying from San Diego to somewhere. I don't remember where we were going. And he was an older gentleman. We talked the entire flight, and he told me about insurance. And he said, if you want to be where I am, you've got time on your side, you should really consider insurance. And in my young brain, I heard him, but I also knew I wasn't going to stay in San Diego forever. And at that time, it's weird talking about it now in 2025, where we don't have all of this technology that we have now. But back then I thought, I didn't want to start a relationship type business when I knew I wasn't in the place where I was going to stay long term. So I never forgot about him. I wish I knew his name, because I'd love to reach out to him now and say, here I am. I never forgot you. But when I moved back to Kansas City and I knew I wasn't going, I'm not leaving, I started looking at insurance, remembering that man and his conversation. So I got my job. My first insurance job was as a captive agent with AAA, so personal lines, and was there for about 1.5 years. And then I took a job at a commercial specialty company that works with just landlords. They sell landlord insurance for real estate investors, and they sit in the E&S marketplace. And that really kind of turned me on to what is out there and the different opportunities for insurance, and talking about risk with business owners. And so I left that job in May, and I specifically was looking to work for an independent insurance agency because I wanted to be able to have more options, have the admitted carriers and the not admitted carriers, to be able to not have to say no, or, a certain risk isn't always the right fit for everybody. But that kind of is my path to get here. And I think for what we may attract a new audience to the show, because I know you've had young, as in age, young people. Like there was a gentleman who was 19 last season, or maybe that was the first year. And then we have Sam this year who's in his 20s. But could I be the youngest, meaning green, the most green to commercial that's ever been on the show?
No. And the only reason why I say that is because of your background of insurance in general. We had a dude that was on that made it like the first couple of weeks last season and then dropped out, but he came from the construction industry with no insurance experience whatsoever. And honestly, the whole thing's nuts to me because he could have absolutely crushed. He lived in his own head too much.
Hmm.
That's why he didn't stick around. But I would say, by and large, most people haven't had much middle market experience when they come in. Like even Derek, who won season one, did benefits quite a bit and maybe fell into a couple of small commercial accounts. But I mean, even then listening to him talk, like that when you listen to his original application video, he's like, I really want to get into middle market. I really want to learn what it's about. I want to understand how to sell it and all of this stuff. That's what makes it so cool. And I mean, I remember when you reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, look, I really want to get in, but here's where I'm at. And I basically was very creative in how I figured out how I could help you because I couldn't help you based on where you're at. The agency you're at's already a protected territory. So you couldn't have come into Killing Commercial if you offered me $100,000 because I've already got an agency there and I protect the territory and only work with one. And so I'm like, you know what? They're not protected from the Protege, and the Protege doesn't cost anything. And if you're ready to drink from a fire hose and go through it and learn and get as much experience and exposure to, some of the brightest minds out there in insurance, go for it, And that's how you got here. Like I wanted to, and I'm glad you did. I'm glad you messaged me. I'm glad you decided to listen to my advice and actually put yourself out there. And then here we are. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a huge opportunity for you. And part of the thing is, what I've done this year is having 2 years of not doing Protege, at least 2 years. It might have been three. I don't remember. To sit back and reflect on like how I would do it different. Because anytime you have a project like that that's so publicly visible, you're always like, I mean, at least I am. I'm always thinking about how can I improve? How can I push the envelope further? How can I bring more people in? Because for me, this is a huge opportunity for all of the contestants to learn, but not even just the contestants, the people that actually consume the content online,
That was
um,
me.
and that's the thing, a lot of people, um, probably think that there's a huge benefit to me, like to me personally for doing this. I don't make a dime for it. Do I get some brand exposure? Yeah, sure, I do. But most of the feedback that I get's negative because people think that it's an arrogant position or I'm putting myself out there in a way to like, hey, look at me. And that's certainly not the case mentally. And if it's coming across that way, then we can fix that in production. But I really want to make sure, and it truly is my desire for everybody who's a contestant to gain the most that they possibly can from the experience of going through it. If you're willing to put yourself out there and help create the content that the industry is going to consume, the least I could do is deliver on the promise to give you best in class training and education for the time that we're together. That's it. And so differently this year than in the past. I brought in guest mentors. We have like 13 or 14 weeks
Hmm.
worth of calls where I'm bringing in people that are literally subject matter experts for the industry in that segment or that call topic. And I want everybody to participate in those. The other thing that I've been very clear about is, guys, lady, there's only going to be one winner. 8 people aren't going to win. And I don't need people making it weird, like just because you lose, we're not voting you. Yes, you're not going to be in the subsequent episodes, but we're not voting you off the island and out of the family. It's one of those things that once you're in unless you choose to leave. And I want people to continue to go through the process that they would go through to build the mousetrap. Because whether you're
Hmm.
going out and selling using what you learn to as part of the Protege, or you're doing it to build your book of business, you're really doing it to build your book of business in both cases. You just might not be featured in the episodes and stuff. And I encourage everybody to take every single challenge. If I'm willing to give you, and I don't want this to sound the wrong way, if anybody were willing to give you their time and review your work product and give you direct feedback to make you better and not charge you for it, why, and those people are qualified to do it, why wouldn't you want to do that, right? It's literally, you're going to get a master class in how to break into middle market commercial. What's interesting to me is the number of people that are like, you know what? If you don't want to stick around through the competition to get all of the advice and feedback and coaching you can get, because you didn't have we didn't vote you through or move you through based on work product or our perception of work product from one week to the next. God forbid somebody tells you no, you don't get an appointment when you try to telemarket for one, or you do a marketing drop and they say they're not interested. It's the same thing. That just tells me that the people who don't stick it out are probably not going to make it in the industry because they don't have the wherewithal to do it. So I'm excited for you. And we talked a little bit before we came on today. My thing is, I'm excited for everybody because I get to look at this from the perspective of having run 2 seasons of it. And I know that the opportunities that will present themselves to you. It's just going to be amazing. And what's really cool for me is the relationship that I get to have with the people who come through the program, but also watching the relationships that are built between the coaches and their producers, and also just the contestants between each other. You're going to leave this with a network like you've been in the industry for like 20 years. It's crazy. But it's almost like just add water. Here it is. Boom.
Yeah, it's interesting how I found you. When I had decided commercial insurance was the way I wanted to go, I looked to YouTube for content, as many do for various things. And I guess take a step back. I had actually found a risk advisor group where you can get your CIC. And I think you had mentioned this on our previous call, how
National
when you went
Alliance.
Yes. So I was like, ooh, this is great. I went ahead and signed up for the commercial property, like whichever one was coming up next. Not knowing at the time there's a subscription. I learned that from you a couple weeks ago that there's a subscription. I just paid the $400 for one class, just thinking that if I can start getting the lingo and it would help me in my interview process. And within that time, I found your content, and I probably watched, I don't know, I've almost watched every video. And then that's when I found the Protege.
Oh, geez, that's a lot of videos. There's
a lot.
Like, there's over 1,000 videos on that channel now.
I listen to it in the car. I listen to it when I'm at home. If I'm doing something else, I have it on in the background. Like, I'm trying to consume. So when I say I'm a sponge, like I really, truly am a sponge trying to soak up it. And like a lot of the things that you said, even in these side conversations, really helped me in the interview process. And that might help other people that are new like me. That's why I'm almost, if you are looking to trying to break into this industry, there's a lot of tips and even things he says in these side conversations that you can use. And one of them, I can give an example. You had talked about when you first started, you didn't have enough money to pay for a producer. So when you were meeting with different industry professionals, you would meet them for coffee, and then you would meet them for a couple months just to kind of see their personality and if they would keep their commitment, because you had a deal on lead share, things like that. And then after a few months in, you'd say like, are you open to something different? And then as they would send the leads to you, you would tag them for that person. And so when it got to the amount that they needed, then you're basically having a slush fund for them to move over and, come on board with you as a producer. But that was a relationship that was cultivated over time. I love that. And I actually
and the other caveat to that is we hand them the book of business that they referred in. Like that's their book. They're essentially building their book before they, and this is how Kyle got to be here. But I look at it this way. Number one, I'm giving them a book of people they already know. So like they're building it ahead of time under the premise they're building it so that they can come on board. I don't worry about losing the account because these people already have a relationship with this person. They've also got a relationship with us at this point. So they know that we're going to be able to handle the insurance piece and they get to have their old friend back. The other thing is, it takes a long time. Like I shouldn't say a long time. It's a process though. It's a, from the initial conversation, which is typically 4 to 6 months into a referral relationship, to the time I'm ready to make somebody an offer to come on board, it's realistically probably 18 or 24 months. And the cool part about that is, think about how many new business appointments they've been on with me or one of my producers. How many new business appointments have I been on with them, so I can see how they pitch? By the time they're ready to come on board, not only are they already validated, but they also know our value proposition because they've heard us lay it out so many times. And I know how they interface with their clients. And that's the thing. Like, I'm not learning about how somebody is going to produce after the fact. I'm learning about it before they ever come in. And the other thing is, maybe they're just going to be a really good referral partner. Maybe I don't feel like our moral compasses are aligned, or there's something that's just not going to work because from a culture standpoint or whatever else. I never even have to make the initial pitch. I don't ever have to plant that seed with them. So maybe they're just a referral partner forever. Or if it ends up getting to be where, we're 18, 24, 36 months in, maybe they're just always going to be a referral partner because the velocity is never really there. Who knows? But to me, that's part of what it takes to make it in the industry. You really have to have street smarts to figure things out, and you got to be quick on your feet. And the only reason that I did that is because I didn't have money. Like, literally every penny that I had in my retirement was pushed into the center of the table when I launched the agency. And I'm all in 100% to this day. I'm all in. My net worth is tied up in everything that I do. A lot of people probably think I'm nuts for that, but I would say, based on the number of people who call wanting to buy my agency for a multiple every week, I'm good. I could probably cash out that easier than I could a 401k at this point, but I'm not going anywhere. It just forces you to think about things from a different angle, and when I'm looking at how do I scale, how do I bring in an account manager? Well, my gosh, like, that's the next piece of it that's almost impossible, because that's a fixed cost at that point. It's not revenue generating. So I actually brought in a producer and an account manager at the same time. Like, I really wasn't ready to bring Kyle in, but we had that referral relationship. And I just told him, I'm like, look, man, his company got bought by venture capital. They wiped out a bunch of staff, and he found himself without a job. And I'm like, look, I wasn't ready, and I can't offer you much, but if you're willing to work, I can give you a path to more money than you could possibly make. And he said, what CRM do you have? And I said, HubSpot. He said, I'm in. Like, that's literally the conversation. He didn't know that, from a system standpoint, what we were doing, because it never really came up in conversation. And we hadn't had that, hey, did you ever think about this? It was more, I was actually at a fundraiser for a nonprofit, and I was sitting at the table with a guy that was a mutual friend of Kyle and mine. And I just happened to ask him, I'm like, hey, you heard anything from Kyle? I haven't talked to him in a few weeks. He's like, actually, he got downsized last week. And I said, that would be why he didn't return my phone calls then. And he goes, I said, do you have his cell? He goes, yeah. I said, give it to me. I got up from the table at the nonprofit and went out and set the meeting for us to go have lunch to talk about him coming on board. And he's like, hey, man, he goes, I'm actually getting married and I'm going to Thailand for my honeymoon for 2 weeks. Can we talk when we come back? And I'm like, no, let's Zoom while you're on your honeymoon. Come on, man. But, there's so much opportunity. And that's the thing with the industry that I think is exciting about it, is if you look at things from a different perspective and you look at a way to solve problems that other people aren't looking the same way to do that, it is such fertile ground. And that's the thing that cracks me up. I have people who throw shade at me for my ideas all the time. I'm okay with it, because that just means they don't understand what I'm doing. There's a guy out there right now that loves to throw shade at people who put out content to help other producers or other agents, because they're under the impression, specifically on LinkedIn, that you should be putting things out for whoever your ideal prospect is, and that's how they're going to find you. Well, that's fine, but that guy doesn't have a podcast that gets 50,000 downloads a month, and he doesn't have the same LinkedIn following that I do. And what he doesn't understand is that last year I had over $100,000 of revenue that I wrote referred to me from my LinkedIn posts and my podcasts. And the reason that it happened is because people hear me like you did, and they reach out
Mm-hmm.
if they've got a family member or a friend who owns a bit, or a client that's moving to Florida, or they have a piece of their business in Florida, or they're opening a business or have a business, and they understand how we do business and agree with the philosophy. I get inbound referrals every single day from people that I've never met that just follow my content because they're producers who need a home for something, and they want it to go somewhere where they can trust somebody, and I've gained that trust. But
And there
that's the
really,
thing. Like,
yeah, there really isn't a lot of content for commercial producers on there. So that's a hole you are filling by offering this and being willing to do it. Because I know it does take time for you to do it, but people like me, you mentioned before forget the term you use, but the not the dark web, but it's like the people you don't know. You know, the people who chat, who comment on your videos, and who'll reach out to you, but you don't know everybody else who's watching and consuming your videos and how you're impacting them. And prior to me reaching out to you, what you didn't know, like just watching the Protege, and I know I think there were 3 or 4 women on it last time, but they were really inspiring to me. And a lot of the exercises helped me in my interviews and to have me think through my 90-day first year plan. There was even it was funny, the cold call. There was one you had last season, you had everyone do cold calling. I happened to watch that episode, and the very next day in an interview they had asked me to do a role playing cold call, and I was like,
yeah,
oh, okay. It's like I had just watched that the day before, so I was primed and ready to go, and I just took pieces from what all the contestants did, kind of made it my own on the fly. But had I not heard that in that moment, and so you just never know. I mean, that's one of the great things about anyone who puts out content is there's so many people who consume it, and you are impacting people in so many ways positively. And it is like, for me, it's like I wanted a little bit more. Like a lot of things you're saying kind of meshed with how I always try to find value adds, and to help my clients. I'm a connector by nature. I like seeing people win, and that to me is fulfilling. I feel like the money will follow at some point, but if I can connect 2 people together and make them successful,
the money will always follow.
yeah,
If
it's
you
just,
follow your passion and what you're passionate about, and you do right by other people, you may not get instant gratification, but it will always follow, and it will be a much greater reward than you ever would have gotten just doing quick hit business. Like I've
yeah.
always believed that. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about dealing with with your peers, where you're helping them, and then ultimately they end up helping you by lobbing you a layup referral or whatever, or if
Mhm.
you're dealing with prospects and doing everything.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of great things that you had put out there. So I'm hopeful. I mean, I'm excited to be able to meet not only the contestants, but the coaches, everybody in this space. And I am a sponge, just trying to soak up and learn as much as I can. Um, I feel the, you know, there is a huge difference between the personal line world, and the commercial space. Even something as simple as, like, everybody in commercial know this and kind of chuckle, but I did not know that if you go and get a quote from a particular carrier, you're blocking that carrier from another person getting a quote from them. That's not a thing in the personal line world, right? And so knowing that that is the way that the commercial world works was new. And also having the ability to have a relationship and communicate with underwriters and negotiate rates with underwriters, which is something that you can't do in the personal line world. We all, you have an underwriter you work with, but they basically tell you this is it, yes or no. Not much wiggle room. So that also is very interesting and appealing to me. I'm thinking one of my niches, well, I've 2 main ones. I may have a third, but my 2 are the pet industry space. So veterinarians, kennels, groomers, boarding daycares. And that's kind of I didn't touch on that in my history, but I have
You know
been in the
what? Here's the
world.
thing with that too, just to give you some feedback. That's not what I would call traditional middle market. If it is, it's lower end, but that is really, really good business to write. We have a book, probably 30 or 40 of them, maybe more than that, of mobile pet groomers, and that is great business. Like you, in the premium on it jumps pretty quickly. It's not slow growth. Like you get down here, obviously rates are a little different. Our auto's bad, but I mean, you get a mobile pet groomer that needs, the inland marine, the GL, the PL, the auto, and all of that. You're looking at probably between $20,000 and $30,000 worth of premium for a mobile pet groomer to get everything they need to have with the care, custody, and control of the animal and all of that. So, you know, we have a ton of inbound traffic for those. We can quote them over the phone, and it's like 15 or 20 minutes. And here's, this is where I start to think a little bit differently for stuff outside the middle market, but the same across the board in any business that we write. And it's, what's your hourly rate? What are you going to be willing to work for? Well, if I've got 20,000 in premium and it's going to take me 30 minutes to write it, and I'm going to bring in 3,000 in revenue, that's 6,000 in revenue an hour to quote and bind that business, because it's a really transactional thing, because they're coming to our website based on organic blog content that we put up that we rank for on Google, and we get multiple leads a day for that stuff. So I'm just reinforcing, I think you're on a good, probably shouldn't be coaching you right now, but, let your coaches do that. But I do think, based on what we talked about outside of recording and then now on the podcast, I think that's a great area for you to go to. And just anything involving animal care is kind of its own niche, but it's a broader niche. Like you could go as deep as mobile pet groomers being your niche, but if you could go to, it broadens out to groomers, and then, boarding and daycare facilities, and then ultimately vets. And really the only competition you have when you get into the veterinary stuff is the national program that they have with Hartford, but you can write Hartford locally. And the twist that we always put on that is, do you want somebody from across the country to be the one that answers the other end, on the other end of the call, or do you want somebody that can show up at your business to help you when something happens? And that's how we do it. But there's tons of that out there too. It doesn't matter where you're at in the country.
Yeah. And I started a animal welfare organization back in 2015 when I lived in Houston. So Houston and the South in general is really, they have a lot of animals, and the shelter that we served was a Harris County Animal Shelter. I created a Facebook page that ended up growing to be the third largest in the country on marketing shelter animals at risk. And it was a matter of like, hey, here's a dog, it's a need, help it. And so we would try to showcase 100 animals a week. There was a page in New York, there was one in California that was larger than ours, and there were others in the Houston area that were doing a similar thing. But was very connected with a lot of the rescues, and just the pet world. We would also coordinate transport. So when I moved to Indiana, I switched and was on the receiving end, and I coordinated 4 transports a month. I had 12 shelter and rescue contacts in the greater Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana area. And that's just and then here I am in Kansas City trying to start it all over again, but it is a passion of mine. So I do have that, the shared interest for the people who are in those businesses. I align with their passion and mission. So that was an easy one for me. And then the other one I'm looking at is in the real estate space, working with the larger multifamily, or industrial buildings, like really any type of real estate, doing their property, or if they do have, if it is a property manager that does have vehicles, I can add in their vehicles too. So those were the 2 main ones I was looking at. And then I considered, because I meet people in these gathering places, like doing gathering places, I don't know what to call it, but like the coffee shops, the ice cream shops, all the places where people connect and gather, and having a gathering segment of what I do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in both, honestly. It'll be interesting to see which path ends up being the most fruitful for you. They're completely different. And honestly, for me, it's kind of like what Charles said when we were having our call 2 weeks ago, that, he would do things that are two completely different things. Like, and my mind works that way a little bit, or a lot actually, because for the ADHD, it's going to keep me mentally stimulated no matter what it is I'm looking at. When if all I ever did was go in and work with plumbers, I could get through it, but it would be really, really boring for me. But the fact that I get to go work with companies who manufacture flight simulators or nuclear or fuse assemblies for nuclear warheads and some of the DoD contractor stuff that I do, but also do service contractors, that's what really keeps me fresh, to be honest with you. I think it would get really, really stale for me if I didn't have ideal prospects in completely different niches. But then there's things that I'm never going to write. I don't care about real estate. Like, I'm never going to write property driven risk. I'm never going to write condo associations. Number one, the real estate stuff is extremely commoditized. It's almost all excess and surplus lines. It is all going to boil down to who gets to the market first and can drive the price to the bottom, but make sure the coverage is there. That's not my game. I'll let everybody else fight over that. Homeowners associate, not homeowners, but condo association, same general thing. Anything where you have to pitch to a board, I'm really not going to even get involved in it, because almost every single time they've got an agent on the board or an ex-agent on the board or a relative of an agent on the board. And almost, I worked on a couple early, had really good programs, and I got rolled at the end because they turned around and handed it to the person they had the relationship with. It's a very political and much more commoditized play. But if I can go into a light manufacturer that's had issues with lower back injuries and can show them that they need to have a manual material handling program and a safety accountability program and all of those other things, and help them fix those problems and ultimately make their business more profitable, and they respect and they can see the vision of what it's really going to take to get them on track, not just go out and try and quote cheap premium, then it's going to be that's a really good account for me, and it keeps me motivated and engaged the entire time.
And you're teaching, because you can tell you have a heart for teaching, and it's another way to extend that into your client base.
That comes with 4 kids.
Yeah.
And growing up in sports, honestly, I think, for me, one of the things that I've always paid attention to is when you work with people who didn't grow up having to be on teams or being on teams, right? Not saying they're bad people, but I played baseball literally from elementary school all the way till I blew my arm out in college. I knew what it was like to make a mistake and have my team pick me up. I also know what it was like when somebody else made a mistake and I had to help pick them up. I know what it's like to get in somebody's ear when they're not hustling the way they should. And I would expect somebody to do the same for me. And when I look at the organizations that I've worked with and the organizations where I've thrived versus the ones where I really was miserable in my role, both in insurance and otherwise, the places where I was miserable is where leadership never had to be in team sports. They never had to work with other people. They were very much in the silos in terms of how they communicated and what they were willing to share. And in one case, I was a partner of the organization and still didn't know what the other two did, because it's just a completely different dynamic. And so what I realized is when I hire people to bring them into my organization now, one of the questions I ask is, have you ever been involved in team sports? Tell me what that's like, or what that did for you. And I don't know, maybe that could get me in trouble with EPLI. Maybe it couldn't. I don't think so, because it's not a discriminatory question. Or I'll say something like, tell me about a time where you were on a team that had a goal and a deadline to meet and everybody had responsibility. How did you manage that process? Or something along those lines, right? But that's who I'm looking for. I want team players, period, because in my company, we run very, very lean. You need to be cross-trained in order to do something. We had a situation where my personal account manager was out for almost 6 weeks because her husband had a heart attack and unexpected bypass surgery. I didn't have somebody I could just tap on the shoulder and say, hey, you're in. We had to, all of us, tie up our boots real tight, make sure it worked. And I've got VAs on deck that have gone through total CSR to get training and things, but I can't turn over my book of business to them. In most cases, I'm the one who has to pick up the slack on the service because the client's going to call me when she's out, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah. That's I wrote that down actually. I never thought about that. Leadership, and I'm going to now think back to the different managers that I've had. If they've been involved in team sports, there probably is some correlation there.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, that doesn't mean that if you weren't involved in team sports, that people aren't capable of running a successful agency. I'm just telling you that we think differently, and that's common sense, right? If you've never been in that, if you've never been involved in team sports, and I put you on a softball team with me, and I don't feel like you ran to first as hard as you could have, and I get in your grill and say something about it, you're probably gonna get your feathers ruffled a little bit because you're not used to that. But and here I am, 52 years old. I've been dealing with that for 45 years. I mean, I'm used to it. And the people who are around you and they're on your team, they know that you're an intense person. They know that you want to win, and they know that you'll do anything you need to do to help them win too. And if everybody has that same goal, here's the problem. A lot of times the people that are in leadership never even make the goal known publicly to the rest of the team. They don't solicit them for feedback and buy-in. They don't listen to their ideas. They don't implement what makes sense. They just, it's my way, here's how we're going to do it, and we're going to move on. Or people are just going out and doing whatever because there's no real leadership at the top. And I mean, I don't mean that, I guess I do mean it in a negative way, actually, because they're not giving direction. And we see that a lot. Here's why I think we have the problem. Not that anybody's asking me, but I think it's because there's this inherent view that I've noticed in the industry that in order to reach the pinnacle of success, and I'm talking about like the 45,000 independent agencies in the country segment, not national brokers and regionals and all that, that if you're really wanted to be seen as the overly successful person in the industry, you ultimately have to own an agency. And I think that is a horrible mindset to have. I own an agency because I didn't have a choice. It was either go work for somebody else again after I had just been burnt, or start something really cool and build it the way you always wanted to build it. I chose the latter, partially because I've come to realize I really don't have any business working for anybody. I'm always going to be the squeaky wheel. I'm always going to challenge the status quo. I'm always going to ask questions. But guess what? Those are exactly the people I hire because they're extremely valuable. How good are you going to be? How much are you ever going to grow if you don't have people challenging you and challenging the status quo or bringing their own ideas and their own spin to things? And I mean, you have to be open-minded to listen to that stuff and implement it. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to do things the same way they've always been done. And that's half the industry.
Mm-hmm. So when somebody is trying to find the right agency fit for them, what are some questions that you would say that without a doubt, like, don't forget to ask this? Knowing what you know now, and of all the different agency owners and being one yourself, if somebody's trying to find the right culture mix and the right place for them to land, what are some really good nuggets that they should make sure they leave knowing from that conversation?
I think, I don't know, because I can get real outside the box real quick. Like one of the things that I wanted to do, knowing now, if I were to go to work for another agency, if I had to do that, I would go, one of the first things I would ask is if I would be able to interview 3 of their clients and find out if they're really delivering and if there's any BS in what they're telling me versus what's being executed. I'd also want to interview people that and I wouldn't want them to tell me who is who, but I would want to interview the top producer or 2 and the bottom producer or 2. Like, let me talk to some people that are doing really, really well, and let me talk to some people that you think maybe are struggling. I don't want you to tell me who's who. Just let me figure it out on my own. But I would want to find from them, and I would want to find out what's making the top people successful in their mind and what's holding the people who aren't where they need to be back in their own mind. And it would be relatively easy to figure out who's who based on the conversation. I would also want to ask if they would be willing to give, and I know these are all big asks, but this is on a podcast. It's all make believe right now until you actually do it. I would want them to let me talk to 3 clients that left in the last year and find out why. Let me talk to 3 clients that left and have a conversation there if you wouldn't mind doing it. And you know what? Here's the thing. They're probably going to think I'm nuts for asking this. But my God, who else asks that? Like, that's exactly who I want to talk to. Let me talk to the guy that's asking the questions nobody else asks.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, this guy thinks different. He really actually is applying himself to what he wants to learn about our agency. It sounds like he's genuinely interested in taking this opportunity seriously. Nobody else has ever asked to talk to 3 clients that are in our current book or 3 that left us. Nobody else is asked to talk to our top and bottom producers. Usually they just want to talk to the top. Well, yeah, of course, those are the ones that are making all the money and everything's going great in their world. They're not going to give you the real scoop of what's actually going on.
Who would you say in your growth has been the most influential for you? Positive.
Hey, whose podcast is this? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I have an opportunity to finally talk to you, so I'm excited.
I'm messing with you. I think it's a great question. Who do I think has been the most influential?
Positively speaking, for your growth. I
My
know
wife.
who the negative one is.
I would say my wife, honestly. And I'll expand on that. I wasn't going to be in the insurance industry. When I was ready to leave the last group, I had job offers at 3 Fortune 500 companies to go work in a VP level in marketing. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting in the dining room of my house, and, I had a home office desk there. She had one just right to the left of me because her company's based in Ohio and she works from home. And I'm sitting here I was literally sitting with my head down, and she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I got to make a decision." And she goes, what do you decision about what? I said, "Which of these 3 I'm going to take?" And she said, "Why are you even thinking about it?" And I said, "Well, if the choice is obvious to you, maybe you could enlighten me because I'm really struggling with this." She goes, "Well," and by the way, my wife is from Jersey, so I'm going to say this verbatim. It's not normally how I would say something. She goes, "All I've listened to you do is bitch for the last 8 years, that nobody listens to your ideas. They're not willing to hear what you have to say. They talk down to you. They don't respect you as a peer. So why don't you just go start an insurance agency and do everything you said you wanted to do and prove them wrong and be wildly successful?" She said, "What's holding you back from doing that?" And I said, "Well, to be completely transparent with you, part of it's the male ego in the fact that I want to be the breadwinner for the household. I want to be the one that's bringing the money in and supporting you and the kids, and I don't want to put you at risk." And she said, "David, I make plenty of money to cover everything for both of us. You need to go do where you're going to be the happiest, or we're going to be right back where we were before. Don't let your ego get in the way. Do what you want to do. You have 100% of my support, and I'll do anything I can to help you be successful doing it." 5 minutes later, I filed for my LLC. I was registered with the state, and I was joining FAIA to buy my E&O. And I think that's the first part of what I want to answer about that. Now, there's some trail to that thought process, because having a supportive structure at home is something extremely important for a producer to be successful. Not every day is going to be the greatest day you've ever had. So when I decided, like, Producers in Paradise, it was an accident. Okay. The whole thing was a fluke. It just sort of happened. I opened my mouth because Annie and I were going to Key West for that weekend. That's the same weekend that we go every year, because that's the weekend that I made the decision. I was launching Florida Risk Partners, and that was launching in July 1st when I came back. And so we went down there. There's a picture and a long post that goes out on social every single year of us standing at the mile marker 0 mark in Key West, because I was starting over with 0 at 42 years old. And so we were going back down, and we had another couple that was supposed to go with us, and they canceled, and we had a fishing charter booked. And I said, "Guys, I'm putting it out on Facebook. Anybody in Killing Commercial that thinks they would like to come down, you can be my guest on my fishing charter. I'm not paying for your hotel or your airfare, but if you want to go on a world-class fishing charter, come to Key West this weekend, and I'll talk enough shop that you can write it off as a business expense for coaching or whatever else." and I ended up having to pay for 4 other boats out of pocket because I had that many people show up. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay,
I
this
haven't
is
heard this story. That's good.
yeah, this is serious, and I'll never open my mouth like that again. But to me, it was a testament of how many people were putting their faith and their trust in me. And I wanted to make sure that I always delivered on that to them. And so that's first group, that first year will always be a very special group to me personally for that reason. And so, when you look at it, and I thought through it, as that, and so then they're like, hey, are we going to do this again next year? I'm like, we are, but David's going to go get some sponsors because that's not in the budget. And so the next year we had 60 some people show up, then 100 and some people show up. This year we're going to probably have between 300 and 350 show up. But one of the things that I always require about Producers in Paradise, as much as I can require it, is you need to bring your spouse or significant other with you. I don't want solo people coming to the insurance conference. And the reason why is because I know how important the support structure is at home, not just in the office. And so if I can bring a wife or a husband or a boyfriend or a girlfriend in and get them in with the other husbands, wives, boyfriends, or girlfriends, and they can start building relationships, there's nothing better than having somebody who's brand spanking new at a scratch agency and they don't know what's happening next, but they knew that if they came down here, they would get fed. And my wife is sitting there, or another wife, they're like, look, we get it. We know exactly where you're at. We've lived the boxed macaroni and cheese days. We've eaten plenty of ramen. Here's what you can expect, but you can't lose sight of what the overall goal is. No matter how much you want to vent, no matter how bad things get, call me, vent to me. You need to support him or her in everything they're doing. And ultimately, that's going to accelerate their success to a level that you never thought they would get to much quicker. So that's why unequivocally I can say my wife was my biggest motivation, but that's what I've taken from her being my biggest motivation and trying to do the best I can to instill that into the culture of the community. And it's worked very, very well. It's actually pretty funny because we have female agents. It's not funny we have female agency owners, but we have female agency owners and the husbands are in the spouses group with my wife and the male's wives, and they do their own thing. It's been awesome. And it started out with not as many, but last year we had a ton. And I think it's a ton of men with the women while the agency people are in doing the educational stuff. And it's really been cool for me to see that, to be laying in bed at night and hear my wife snickering about something and ask her what it is. She's like, oh, I'm in the Killing Commercial Wives thread or whatever. That means the world to me more than teaching anybody how to sell an insurance policy.
Yeah. And I did not, no, I like
Sorry, I didn't mean to get so heavy on you on such a simple question.
Well, but it hit home because I'm right where you were then. Like I'm starting over. And it's hard. It's hard to do. And but like I know, like that's interesting to think about. So that was what?
I've seen this industry ruin far too many marriages.
But that was 10 years ago, right? For you?
10 years ago is when I started over. We just had our 5th Producers in Paradise this last summer.
Yeah. But 10 is when you took that picture at the 0 mile mark.
Yeah, it'll be 10 years this year. It was July. It was right at the end of June of 2016. And I launched the agency July 1st. Officially.
That's a new story. I'm going to think of where I can take my own 0 picture now. My wheels are turning. No, but I really do thank you so much for your willingness to do this and to offer the content. It is invaluable. It has been very, very helpful for me. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm kind of happy that I'm the only woman that applied because
I want to be very clear. You didn't get in because you were the only woman. You got in because you deserve to be in. I listened to your story. You reached out to me on LinkedIn. I told you what to do to get in. You did it. And your story's compelling enough. And I know that it makes for good. I know that you're a relatable personality right now with where you're at in your journey, that other people need to see what you're going through and hear what you have to say and watch your progress. And that's why you're in. It's not because you're a female. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in that. I believe in bringing people in based on their ability to win and actually contribute. and be successful in doing it. The number of people who just slap something together thinking that they were going to have a realistic opportunity. We had over 150 people apply to come in. I mean, it's disgusting to me that you're the only woman that did, because that's exactly what's wrong with our industry right now. We don't have enough minority representation, whether it be race, gender, or otherwise. There needs to be more diversity, and the industry needs to make it to where people have opportunity to be featured that are minorities in the industry. And until, more people are willing to step up and feature those people, it's always going to be the guy smoking cigars behind closed doors that are calling all the shots for the industry. And that's not the room I want to be in.
Mm-hmm. What did make me pause to apply was the fact that I have a very little experience, and I didn't know if that,
that makes you a better candidate, honestly, because I don't have to brainwash you from all the stuff that doesn't apply. Most people think, oh, well, I should probably go spend a couple of years writing personal lines or small commercial just to get my feet wet so that I can understand. And my answer 100% of the time when people say this is, why? Why don't you start where you want to be? There is no translation between personal lines and middle market. There's no translation between small bop walk-in commercial and actual middle market. It's a different process. It's a different client. It's a completely different conversation. And the reality is there's not enough meat on the bone to have the conversations that you have with the middle market people. So the talk tracks don't transfer. Now, I want to be clear. There's plenty of people that have made a ton of money writing non-standard auto. Ton of people who've made money writing Main Street personal lines and small commercial. That's the cool part about the industry. You can pick and choose how you want to do it. And you're probably going to, if you can stick to it, you're probably going to do all right in terms of making money. It's just not what my belief structure is. It's not what my experience has been, and it's not what I teach. So, I think that you're in a great spot. I think you don't have, I do have to brainwash you a little bit from your personal lines days, but that is so irrelevant to what you're going to be going through over here that I don't even think I'm going to have to do that. So I prefer people like you've heard me say this, I'm sure, but my preference is to hire people who don't have any insurance experience at all. I don't want it.
You made a post on, I think it was LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, where you were thinking about having more people with less experience, and reading that, I was like, oh, made me sigh a little bit of relief, because that was the one part where it wasn't that I was a woman, but it was that I didn't have that much experience. And as I watched season 2, I was picking up, like I said, tons of tidbits and great nuggets and great information from people who had been in the industry for 20, 15, many years. And so when you had suggested that I apply, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, okay. But if you look at the demographic of who's in there now, almost all of them are new.
In this season?
Yeah, if you look at the people who were in there, they're almost all new.
To middle market, you're saying, or to?
Yeah, in general. Like Rich Bales was doing something else. Aaron was the CEO of a hospital. You were doing real estate stuff. Brian Shaw had some level of life and health experience, but his agency's a relatively new scratch agency. The one that's got the most experience, the two that have the most experience that I can think of off the top of my head are Jeff Roundtree and Joe Hollier. But the rest of y'all are almost all clean, brand new.
Oh, good. So that's more. This is a different twist then. So for everybody watching who are trying to get in or start in
I want people to think that the insurance industry is every bit as sexy as $1 million listings for the real estate industry.
Oh, yes. I've heard people compare the two. So when I say I'm on a reality show for insurance, I'll say, oh, like the $1 million listing for real estate. I'm like, yeah.
That's exactly what I wanted it to be from the very beginning, so that we can shine light on the opportunity that the industry has to offer. We need to wrap up because I've got to grab lunch right before I do my 1:00. But before I do that, the one question that I've asked everybody that's come on, and I haven't asked you yet, I'm going to make the assumption you fully believe you're going to win, and I hope that's the case. But even when you believe that, there's somebody you're keeping your eye on over your shoulder. Who's the person that you think you need to keep your eye on the most?
That's a fun question. I haven't thought about that.
Could you imagine me in a new business appointment with the questions that I ask?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, it's hilarious too, because we didn't even have the podcast until COVID. And when I started after having the podcast for 5 years, the questions I ask in new business appointments are so much better. Like the podcast has made me a much better question asker than I was before.
Yeah, because you're having to ask. Yeah. I've heard you ask the question, like, what made you choose to apply? You've asked everyone that. I haven't heard the who are you.
Well, you already told everybody because you
Yeah.
were new and you were looking for resources and you found me on YouTube. I was going to ask you, but you kind of answered it before I did.
Yeah. So who do I see? Honestly, everybody, but probably Mr. Hotel.
Yeah, Mr. Hotel.
Yeah,
He's
but
got a couple votes.
25 years in, very clear on his niche. He's very focused, and so his experience in this process will be more so in elevating his game. He already has a process that may or may not be working for him, and so he is just trying to level up where I'm in a completely different chapter of life than he is, and so I'm trying to get the train to start rolling down the track, and at the same time leveling up. So I don't know. I mean, you can look at it two different ways.
I think that you become more impressive if you're making big strides than if you're making incremental improvements. That would be my thoughts. Now, I will tell you, this whole process has taught me how to be completely agnostic across the board. Like I understand at some level how a judge can sit on the bench and like keep an open mind, because I truly don't I don't have any favorites. And I know people think that somehow deep down inside I'm hiding who I hope will win. No, I just hope one of you win, and I know one of you will. It doesn't matter to me. It's not up to me. It's really ultimately up to how people accept the challenge, put their work product together, and what they submit. And I can look at that and let it speak for itself. And that probably comes from the fact that I worked so long in the grocery industry, where you live and die by your numbers, period. Like there was never any emotion in it. I mean, yeah, there was emotion if you had a bad week, don't get me wrong, but it's like, hey, I know the boss is getting ready to come down on me because I missed my sales per man hour by $20, you know?
Yeah, any sales job's that way. So
Yep. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking time to join me today. We've got a great call this afternoon. I hope you're going to be there to participate with our guest mentors. Daniel Wakefield and Ciara Gravier are going to do it together. They do a great job on this topic. It's actually kind of a little bit of a replay from Producers in Paradise. So I look forward to sharing that with everybody. But we will catch you then. Everybody else, we'll catch you next time. See you.